I have come to talk about survival. It's a question of survival of this system.
Well, you spoke several times before about ideological subversion. That is a phrase that I'm afraid some Americans don't fully understand.
It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in four basic stages. The first one being demoralization. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. Why that many years? Because this is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students in the country of your enemy, exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism, American patriotism. The result you can see. Most of the people who graduated in the 60s, dropouts or half-baked intellectuals, are now occupying the positions of power in the government, civil service, business, mass media, educational system. You are stuck with them. You cannot get rid of them. They are contaminated. They are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information. The process of demoralization is complete and irreversible. Actually, it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards. The next stage is destabilization. This time, subverter does not care about your ideas and the patterns of your consumption. Whether you eat junk food and get fat and flabby, it doesn't matter anymore. This time, and it takes only from 2 to 5 years to destabilize a nation. What matters is essentials: economy, foreign relations, defense systems. And you can see it quite clearly that in some areas, in such sensitive areas as defense and economy, the influence of Marxist-Leninist ideas in the United States is absolutely fantastic. I could never believe it 14 years ago when I landed in this part of the world, that the process will go that fast. The next stage, of course, is crisis. It may take only up to 6 weeks to bring a country to the verge of crisis. You can see it in Central America now. And after crisis, with a violent change of power, structure, and economy, you have so-called the period of normalization. It may last indefinitely. Normalization is a cynical expression borrowed from Soviet propaganda. When the Soviet tanks moved into Czechoslovakia in '68, Comrade Brezhnev said, "Now the situation in brotherly Czechoslovakia is normalized." All American mass media has to do is to unplug their bananas from their ears, open up their eyes, and they can see it.
Okay, so what do we do? What is your recommendation to the American people?
The immediate thing that comes to my mind is, of course, there must be a very strong national effort to educate people in the spirit of real patriotism, number one. Number two, to explain them the real danger of socialist, communist, whatever, welfare state, big brother government. If people will fail to grasp the impending danger of that development, nothing ever can help United States. You may kiss goodbye to your freedom, including freedoms to homosexuals, to prison inmate. All this freedom will vanish, evaporate in 5 seconds. I'm talking about forcing United States government to stop aiding communism, because there is no other problem more burning and urgent. Educate yourself, understand what's going on around you. You are not living at the time of peace. You are in a state of war, and you have precious little time to save yourself. The disaster is coming closer and closer. Unlike myself, you will have nowhere to defect to, unless you want to live in Antarctica with penguins. This is it. This is the last country of freedom and possibility.
Welcome aboard, everybody, for another Wednesday Night Live. I wanted to take today to cover Yuri Bezmenov. Some of you, many of our followers actually should know who good old Yuri is, but I was watching a channel with on YouTube with the Quack brothers. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but it's your basic patriotic type stuff, and one of their videos came up in my recommendations, and it was all about Yuri Bezmenov. And I kind of stopped and thought, we've used Yuri in so many clips. We've talked about him somewhat often in short spurts, but we never actually sat down and explained to people who Yuri is and why what he preached was so prophetic. And it wasn't prophetic like he had some sixth sense. It was prophetic because he worked for the KGB in the propaganda division, and he fully understood what their program actually was. So I thought I would take a minute or at least one live episode to go over that, have the discussion about it. I may put out a separate video on him, as well as some other of the so-called prophets. Alexander Solzhenitsyn is another one who warned in the 70s in his speech warning to the West to beware of social justice and finer shades of equality, like calling stuff out by name, telling us what the blueprint is, and us just not listening. And for decades, we didn't listen. But today, we're going to make it about Yuri. Before I get into this, I want to just say, make sure that you're smashing the follow button. Make sure you smash the YouTube subscribe button. Same for Rumble. If you're on YouTube, make sure you're hitting that bell. We have had issues with people who don't hit the bell for our channel pretty much don't get alerts. So YouTube says, well, you'll get some alerts if you subscribe and don't click the bell. But people that don't click the bell for us, and when I say don't click the bell, I mean like my own family members, like my own personal account doesn't get alerts if I don't click the bell, that kind of stuff. So make sure you're smashing that. Also, keep in mind, we do have all shirts you see me wearing on the show. We do have available. You can go to our website and just right on the front page, the patriotthinktank.com, you will see a link for our Etsy store. All right, so let's go ahead and jump into this. And Susie Saluk from Alaska. I love Alaska. Let me just tell you, we did a cruise to Alaska because I'm probably not going to survive if I just go out there into the neck of it. But we did a cruise, and it is by far, there's nothing even comparable to the beauty of Alaska. Your camera doesn't even capture the majesty. I was trying to take pictures, and the camera didn't even capture the majesty that I was looking at. So let's go ahead and get into Yuri. So if you don't know who Yuri is, I believe it was 1970. He defected. He was in the Soviet Union, much like Alexander Solzhenitsyn was. He was in the Soviet Union working in their propaganda division, and decided he wanted out. As according to him, most people in that situation, even though they were doing fairly well by Soviet standards, they wanted out. They wanted their basic freedoms, and they clearly weren't getting them. So he decided to leave, and he came to the United States in 1970, went on to teach classes at universities about what they call ideological subversion or active measures, and then went on and did that interview, and that's rare footage. You won't find a ton of Yuri. There's another one of him teaching a class on YouTube, but you won't find a ton of him around, and for obvious reasons. That was not the message that the media stream wanted out at the time. Now, in the intro that we showed, that was in 1984. The irony is rich, but that was in 1984, and he was doing that interview explaining what ideological subversion is. And it is clearly what is going on, or what has gone on in the United States for decades on end. Now, at the time, even in 1984, Yuri Bezmenov was looking at the hippie generation as the first successful demoralized generation. And basically, the way ideological subversion works is in 4 stages. And this is like a playbook. This isn't like Yuri just saying, well, these are the stages I came up with to define what they're doing. This is what the Soviets called it, okay? And this is the same stuff where the ball was picked up by others after the fall of the Soviet Union. And he goes on in that interview to mention the globalist communist movement. Okay, so he understands too, even at the time, that it's not just the Soviets. It's just the Soviets happen to be, one of the larger communist nations, and a rival to the United States at that time. But he acknowledges the larger globalist movement, and they certainly picked up that ball and ran with it after the Soviet Union fell in the early 90s. Now, the four stages are demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and normalization. I'm going to go through them fairly quickly, but if you guys, for those of you who know this stuff, feel free to chime in. If you don't know anything about this and you have questions, feel free to chime in. But this clearly, and at the end of this, I'm going to get into what Yuri suggests as a solution, and really what I've been suggesting as the solution is the same thing. Just Yuri wasn't aware, as many Americans still aren't, of what that solution is. So let me try and grab. So I put together a few clips of Yuri just to sort of break down exactly what he's talking about. And number one was demoralization. I played this in the intro. So he says it's a great brainwashing scheme, and that demoralization takes 15 to 20 years to accomplish. And why does it take that long to accomplish? Because that's how long it takes. And you can go back to the intro video for these clips. It's all, you can find this whole interview, by the way, on YouTube as of today. It's there. So you can watch it in its entirety. I cut it down. It's probably a 40-minute interview. I cut it down to like 4 minutes for that intro because it was a 5-minute ticker, and it is what it is. But demoralization is a great brainwashing scheme, as he calls it. And it's basically designed to get the population of your enemy, in this case, the United States, to be incredibly confused, and to be confused about how to even act in their own best interest. And he talks about it in terms of the removal of morality. Does that sound familiar? Right. And so what they do is they go to universities, they inject Soviet or just communist in general teachers and such into universities. Those teachers then teach this to the college kids, and the college kids come out brainwashed. Right. And when I say brainwashed, I mean they think that they're more intellectual than their parents because this is how they sell it to them. Right. So they think that like they're seeing things that their parents just can't see because their parents are blinded by American propaganda, all the while themselves being smacked with this propaganda. So this demoralization process goes on. Now, in 1984, Yuri Bezmenov believed that there were three, at that time, he believed there were 2 to 3 generations who were already demoralized. And when he talks about already being demoralized, according to Yuri, there's no cure. It's irreversible. Once someone is demoralized, once a given member of a generation is demoralized, you cannot save that person. As a matter of fact, he goes on to say the only way that you can help the nation once multiple generations have been demoralized is to raise new ones. So he's like, even if you started today, all you could do is raise another generation to not to be patriotic and to know that those people are doo-doo-doos, and to not fall for what they're trying to pump. And honestly, it's kind of true, right? When you see people who are all so into these different ideologies and such, it kind of makes sense, right? It kind of makes sense. So like I look at it and I say to myself, when I first saw this interview, I said, this explains a lot, right? This explains a lot. And it's been going on. Now, he thought, there was less time than there was. Now, I would argue the 80s kind of counteracted this a little bit and bought us another decade. And for those of you who are not of age in the 80s, that was the Reagan era. And there really was a rejection by the American people of the hippie generation. I mean, that's really what it was. The hippies have been running wild for a good 10 years or so. And America was just like, and here comes Reagan talking about America being the shining city on a hill and all of that. And so people just gravitated to that because they were just tired of hearing these deadbeats bashing on America and promoting communism and Marxism, which is pretty much everything that the hippie generation did. So here's the quick explainer from Yuri.
What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country.
Right? So he's saying like the whole system is designed to confuse and to turn people against each other, which is basically what they've done, what they've successfully done. It started out just in the universities, but it then started to infiltrate the high school level, and we're so advanced now that this is where the porn books and things like that showing up in middle schools and grammar schools are coming from. Okay, that's where it's coming from, and here's how he explains how it's a slow process. Oh wait, sorry, I don't have it yet. I'll have that in a moment. He's going to explain to you why it's a slow process, kind of what I just said, but I think it has a little bit more impact coming from him. So here we go.
It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow, and it's divided in 4 basic stages.
Oh, sorry. I had that clip ultra edited, but he's basically, he gets into what he says in the long run. I didn't mean to edit it that much. He just goes into what I was telling you earlier, that it takes 15 to 20 years. Okay. So it's 4 basic stages. Those stages, demoralization. Demoralization is the longest stage. He felt at that time in 1984 that America, that it had already been completed. Okay. That it had already been completed. And in fact, he thinks it was over fulfilled. 2, 3, and let him talk about.
I'm talking about forcing United States government.
Oh, sorry, wrong clip. This was 1, 2.
The next stage, of course, is crime. The next stage is.
I don't know if I just left it out or.
Actually, it's overfulfilled, because demoralization now reaches such areas where previously not even Comrade Andropov and all his experts would even dream of such a tremendous success. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards.
So he gets into the lack of moral standards, right? And that was the whole point of it, was that the idea is to strip America of its morality, strip it of its religion, strip it of its values, because all of those things are problems for the state, right? If you want state control, you have to demoralize the population. It needs to be a population of people where anything goes. Right. And in order to do that, you cannot have a population of religious people. You cannot have a population that is strong in family values. So what do? You start to implement policy once you get your people in place to start to tear those things to pieces. And over the decades to follow, those things were indeed torn apart. The welfare state destroyed families in inner cities. The abortion had depopulated the country successfully. All of these things started to get implemented, and all of these things started to slowly decay the moral fabric of the nation. Now, once you've got your nation demoralized, and I would argue that we're actually still in that phase. There are some people who are telling me we're already in phase 3, but I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think the world is bought in yet. Now, Central America has bought in. They may be realizing it now, these days, but for at least a decade or so, most of Central America had bought in. This is not just a United States problem, but this is a problem in the we're the biggest nut for them to crack. We're the hardest one for them to get through, because where they would go to other countries and do this, they did it by class system. They did it by, these are the rich, these are the poor. There's a little bit of that here, but the problem with that is, for them in the United States, is that they can't indoctrinate people based on class system because there's too much movement. Someone who's in the bottom percentage in the United States today may very well be in the middle or upper percentage 5 years from now. So you've gone out and you've brainwashed this person, but then they become more successful, and things are working out for them, and they're like, yeah, I'm not really into that, and you've lost them. So what did they do to compensate? They went to race, right? Because that's something that's not going to change. So they went ahead and said, all right, well, the United States is incredibly diverse. That's a thing that we can use to our advantage. And the idea was, you can't turn people against each other based on their wealth, but you can turn people against each other based on their race. And then they invented this whole concept of gender to just add to the division. But in the end, that's how they went about the demoralization process. Now, destabilization is the next portion, right? And that's something that's been more recent. I think, that's the 2020 and on is that portion, right? And this really ties in a lot with what Yuri, not Yuri Bezmenov, of course Yuri Bezmenov, but what Dr. Matthias Desmet was saying with respect to mass formation psychosis, is that, it does make a difference. Now, I don't want to veer this off into Dr. Matthias Desmet, because I want to do a whole separate piece for him. But in the end, it's the same concept. Even Solomon Asch, who did the conformity studies, this all runs under the same umbrella. Okay, it all runs there. But when this destabilization happens, that's where, and it's kind of tied in with crisis, because he says crisis takes only 6 to 8 weeks. Okay, but that's because you've had 2 to 3 years of destabilization. And that's where you just create a ton of free floating anxiety in the world. Just allow things to start to slowly collapse. Give the public something for you to save them from, right? Give the public something for you to save them from. And that's a big deal. Patty Cox in West Virginia. How are you, Patty? Thank you for watching. Always appreciated. And then Susie Sillock says, I disagree with that point. Susie, go ahead and comment again and let me know what point you disagreed with, and I will get back to that. But anyway, getting back to Yuri, we're in the destabilization phase. I believe we're still working on demoralization, and they're trying to push the destabilization phase. I think they jumped the shark a little bit, and they're trying to move a little faster than they had initially intended. I think that's probably because of the election of Donald Trump and the fear that he may be elected again. So their program got a little bit thrown out of whack. They were expecting to have a clear run of Democrats all the way down the line, not just Democrats, but Marxists, right, all the way down the line. And that just didn't happen, and now there's fear that it may happen again. So they're trying to rush things, and I think that's where we're seeing a lot of these other events come together, and I think that's why it's becoming so abundantly clear. So and this is why. So as this stuff moves on, and they're pushing this destabilization phase probably sooner than they wanted to, well, the next phase is crisis. And the crisis is a quick thing. This is not like demoralization where it's 15. So like demoralization, think of it like this, sets the stage, right? Demoralization, you're basically taking generations of people and you're changing their mindset to be useless. You're changing their mindset to be immoral. You're changing their mindset to be accepting of just about anything you want to pump into their head. Okay? So you're setting the environment with demoralization for you to be able to move on to the next phases, because these are the people who wear masks in their car when they're by themselves, right? These are the people who say nothing every time they're told to put their mask back on when they're sitting at a restaurant and they have to go to the bathroom, and somehow as weird as dumb as it is, these people keep doing it, and not only do it, but will get mad at someone else who doesn't, right? So let's see. So Susie Sillock says, because it's used against us. Did I miss a previous one? Oh, here it is. Okay. So that it's irreversible. So you believe that it is irreversible, and that it's used against us. So Yuri believes that it's irreversible. I don't think it's irreversible. What I think, and I think this is probably what Yuri meant, was that you can't convince someone else to snap out of it. So to the person who's already bought in, to that person who really believes that that napkin is saving their life from an aerosol virus, to those people, there's no show they're going to watch. There's nothing someone like me is going to tell these people. There's like, they're in, like, they're going to rationalize everything you say to them to force themselves to believe. But I do believe it's reversible if the decision comes from within. So, and I think that there's actually a lot of evidence for that. I think the Brandon Stroka walkaway movement is the perfect example. And as all of the people, if you're not familiar with that movement, they're all just people who started to see, right? They're all just people who started to see. And when I say see, I mean in terms of like the t-shirts I make, where once you see, you cannot unsee. Like, once you see how ridiculous some of this stuff is, it could be any one of the events, okay, that makes you ask the first question. But then when you ask that question and you realize what the actual answer is, then it leads you to another question. And eventually you get what we call now in pop culture red pilled, right? Because now you suddenly see, and you can't go back. There's no going back to the Matrix once you're unplugged, because now you know. Right now, you know what they're up to, you know what's going on. And when they start to use these keywords and phrases that you used to regurgitate, you can't do it anymore. As a matter of fact, they make you angry because now you've snapped out of it. So I do believe, Susie, just like you're saying, like, it is possible to snap out of it. But it really has to come from the person individually. Like, I don't see everything I've seen and I used to try and convince people with hard facts and walk them down lanes where, I mean, I had someone telling me there's never been ever an issue of election fraud. And I'm like, dude, there was a situation years ago with Mitt Romney, where a district in Philadelphia had 100%, every single person in the district voted for Obama. And I'm like, I understand that may not swing the election one way or another, but it's still clearly one person in the district. There were like 100,000 people or something in the district. I had to go and find the article for him because he just refused to believe that it was true. Like, I had to actually sit there, it took me like 15 minutes to look up, find articles on it, and go ahead and show it to him that this district existed. And that district was treated by everybody as a joke. And it kind of pissed me off at the time. That's why I remembered it, because even Fox News was like, oh, yeah, they started cracking jokes. I'm like, dude, that's a big deal. But they didn't care. They moved on as if that was it. And you know what? I don't have evidence of anything else in that election, so I don't know. But I know that happened. So that would be an example of what. And Rocky Lane, thank you for the comment. This is absolutely right. It's coming from Facebook. Totally true. Oh, I couldn't believe watching people wearing their mask in the car and out in the farmland. Crazy. Yeah. And we'll get into this in later episode with Matthias Desmet. I encourage everybody to go look him up. You may remember when the mass formation psychosis thing was like going viral. Everyone thought it was Dr. Robert Malone on that Joe Rogan show who had brought this to attention. But when I looked into it, it turns out Dr. Robert Malone actually went to Dr. Matthias Desmet and was regurgitating what he had learned from him. So I went straight to Dr. Matthias Desmet. And when you listen to him talk, he's going to be another example. And I'll get into it in that episode, why I believe that all of what's going on right now is literally an intentional move to create a mass formation psychosis. But we'll get into that separate. Right now, we're going to stay on Yuri's. So let me, and then here we have, what is this? There's no going back for sure, but I'm amazed at how many people are sleeping. Yeah. So there are a good amount of people that are dozing, sleeping at the switch, right? And part of that is that they don't want to know. And this, and this is the same problem I deal with Article 5. It really is. It's the same problem, because it's just a different reason, but it's the same problem, is that people don't want to know because, in Article 5's case, they don't want to get off their ass. They don't want to put in any kind of effort whatsoever. And it's always something. It's always, well, I've got kids, I got a job, I got 2 jobs, I got 3 jobs, I got church obligations. I got this obligation. I got that obligation. I got all this stuff going on. But they can't even take the time to go sign the petition, get engaged, educate themselves, and at least educate others on the topic. They can't even do that. And they act like, and this is why I say they're sleeping, is because they act like it's going to be okay if they just don't look. Like they're always going to be able to have two jobs or one job or go see this and go do that. And like these freedoms, like to them, they think they're guaranteed because the Constitution guarantees them. They just won't see the evil right in front of their face, even though it's global, even though this evil is not even just about the United States. But I could tell you right now, if we fall, everyone falls. So every nation in the world should be looking at the United States and watching it like they're watching some freaking epic event happening, because if we fall back here, if we fall into this, we're all done. We're all toast. We're all toast. And the fact that we have a solution like this, and we're like, and our main job is to educate people on this. That's our biggest contribution, is trying to educate people on this topic. And some people jump right in. As soon as they learn, they're fired up about it. Other people, not so much. Other people, they cling to these ridiculous runaway convention theories and other nonsense because they don't want to take action. They just want to complain. They want to play defense every day. They want to play defense every day. They want to just look at their feed or turn on the news and be like, I can't believe they're doing this. What? Biden did what? I can't believe, that's ridiculous. We have to stop this over my dead body, and all other kinds of BS that comes out of their mouth. But when an opportunity is there to actually unite over topics that we all agree on, who doesn't agree on term limits, fiscal restraints on the federal government, and addressing government overreach of authority? Please tell me who doesn't agree with those topics. Like, who is it out there in this country that believes that the deep state should be in place forever? Who believes that? Who believes that Nancy Pelosi is good for this nation? That the fact that these people that have been there for 35, 40 years, who believes that those people do not become corrupt as hell the longer they stay in office? Who believes that? It's not about a conservative or Democrat thing. It's about an American and Marxist thing. You're either Marxist or you're American. I've said that a million times, and I firmly believe that. There are Democrats who still consider the word liberal to mean what it was designed to mean, and that's people who champion free speech. It wasn't long ago that liberals were the ones fighting for free speech while conservatives were attacking it on things like games and game violence, and they want to ban this and ban that. It wasn't that long ago. All right. But now the Marxists have completely taken over the party. All right. At least as far as the leadership is concerned. That doesn't mean that every single voter has flipped to Marxism. And it's important for us to know this because we need those people as our allies, because they are our natural allies. We all want the same thing. We all want the same thing. This conservative right-left thing is nonsense. You either love the country or you don't. That's the difference right now. And there's no Superman. There's no election that's going to happen that's going to stop what Yuri is telling us is happening. All right. And he outlines it in detail. There is no person that you can vote into office who makes that change, who makes that go away. Okay. There just isn't. And here, Yuri talks about the solution as well.
Educate yourself. Understand what's going on around you. You are not living at the time of peace. You are in a state of war. And you have precious little time to save yourself. You don't have much time, especially if you are talking about young generation. There's not much time left for convulsions to the beautiful disco music. Very soon it will go, just overnight.
Right? No time for the beautiful convulsions to the beautiful disco music. But you understand what he's saying, right? Like when it goes quick. And you don't have time at that point to be like, oh shit, it's really happening. and then start taking action. It's too late then. It's over at that point. It's over. The fact that so many people are ringing the alarm bells now, all right, when you see all the writing on the wall. They're not even trying to be cryptic. All right. They're not even pretending, right? When he says stage 4 is normalization, and you hear repeatedly pushed out by the media since really the first week of the pandemic, the new normal, the new normal, the new normal. That's the idea. The idea is to make you think that lockdowns are normal. And like everything else that they've pushed out there, they've successfully got a decent portion. I wouldn't say the majority. Again, the American psyche is very unique. So everyone's got a different button that you can push to completely turn them off to your idea. But in the end, they got enough. They got enough people that, considering that they own all the media, and that's really the big deal, because even though they got, maybe 10% or 15% of the population to go all in, it could be as high as 30. Even though they got that portion to go all in, really what the difference maker is the fact that they own the media. Because now you can make that 30 look like it's everybody, right? And now that you've got corporations bending the knee, right? And pretty much all of them are bending the knee at this point. All right. They're all fighting each other to see who could be more woke, who could hate white people more. Every company wants to know, let's get our best, white people haters out. Let's get them moving up the chain. It's a competition because they're getting these excellent ESG scores out of it, granted to them by the World Economic Forum and companies like BlackRock and Vanguard, who simply won't invest in companies that are not woke, or at least shy away from investing in companies that are not woke. So if you're in, I did a whole episode on this one. If your company is making you take trainings and then throwing into the trainings completely irrelevant stuff like transgender and all that immoral madness that they keep throwing in, anything to break down morality and get you fighting with your family, right? If they're throwing all that stuff into your trainings, right, then chances are it's an ESG score: environmental, social justice, and governance, and not governance. So they measure them. It's like a credit score now for companies. And this is exactly, so now they've got that to power move the freaking corporations. They own the media. So everywhere you go, you turn on the radio, you're hearing it. You turn on your TV, you're hearing it. You go to work, you're getting trainings on it. All of a sudden, a good quarter of the world became transgender. Out of nowhere. From 0.06% of the population to like 25%, if we're to believe all the BS that we're seeing. Now, I don't care if someone's transgender. I don't care. The whole point of freedom is to do whatever the hell you want to do. But the fact is, if you think that there are as many transgenders as these freaks are trying to tell you there are, as these sociopaths are trying to tell you there are, okay, you're crazy. They're not. They don't exist. All right. What you have are a couple of younger generations who are incredibly confused at doing crazy stuff like mutilating their bodies, only to find out later as they grow older and become an adult that they've been duped and that they went down a bad path. All right. So, but all of that ties in with demoralization. All of that will lead us to the destabilization of COVID-19 and the pandemic and all the archaic lockdowns, right? COVID didn't kill the economy, right? COVID didn't kill the economy. These people did, right? COVID didn't cause any of the problems that we have as a result of COVID. But yet they look at us and insult us and continually say, we learned from COVID that, things are very fragile. And this, no, we learned from you that all of these things are dangerous and bad. That's where we learned it from, not from COVID. What we've learned is that you guys are more than happy to take over and take advantage of this crisis. So Rocky Lane says, wow, listening to you, it sounds like I'm talking. And this is my show. I've watched thousands of videos, but I've watched thousands of videos in the last 2 years when everyone said I was crazy. I'm starting my own show because I've always been awake, called The Amazing Rocky Lane Show. 11 a.m. following you. Thank you very much. And you're welcome for the plug too. So everyone go check out the amazing Rocky Lane show. If you like what I'm saying, Rocky's probably going to be saying similar stuff. So it should be right up your lane. Mike Arnold, how are you, sir? Some of us work very hard on Article 5. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And Michael, you know what? There's a ton. There are millions of people working hard on Article 5. So, and now that I'm thinking about it, I don't want to come off. I kind of went off on the people who don't want to engage, but I should take a second to celebrate the people who do, because there are millions of Americans who have gotten on board, who have begun to play offense, who have decided that, you know what, they're done. They're done. They're done waiting. They're done waiting for some savior to come out of the political realm that they can elect and bring everything back to normal, because that person doesn't exist. And when you really look at the problems that we have as this nation, and there are so many right now, they cannot be addressed. They cannot be addressed until the American people crack the whip. All right. And really, that's what Article 5 is, because it's not even about, yes, term limits for all government employees. Yes, that's a big deal. It'll deal with the big state, the deep state. It'll get rid of all these rhinos and socialists and whatever. That's all well and good. That's great. That all helps. Fiscal restraints, yes. Get our financial house back in order. Get off this modern monetary theory. Absolutely. That all helps, right? Government overreach, stop these regulatory agencies who act as just an extra arm of the executive and are able to pass laws without Congress, and they call them regulations, and somehow that's okay. End that. That needs to end, right? So all of these things are important, but what's the most important piece, and this is what, I don't even think Yuri understood that this was an option when he went ahead and did that interview and taught his classes. I don't think he understood the American Constitution as well as he understood KGB propaganda. And in the end, what really happens from this convention, all right, is the precedent that gets set. And I'll say this every episode if I have to. It's the idea that we are no longer playing defense. We're no longer just watching the news or getting something in our feed and being like, what? What the hell? Someone tweets something. Oh, look, they're trying to take over X, Y, and Z. Oh, my God. And everybody goes nuts. I used to be like that. Now I see these things popping off. All these shows that I used to love watching, all of them, I watch them now, and 90% of what they say, I could care less. I don't care that Joe Biden signed another executive order today. I don't care. I don't know how else to put that. It's noise to me now. And the reason why it's noise to me is because I already understand what's going on. So there's no shock value in it, right? So Biden just passed an executive order that apparently gives him the ability to make these executive decisions on spying on people, and I don't care. I don't care, because once we put this whole thing in check and crack that whip, so many intangible things are going to fall into place that have nothing to do with the three topics that the convention is actually about. The mere idea of us cracking that whip is immeasurable. All right. What Thomas Jefferson said, when the people fear the government, it's tyranny. When the government fears the people, it's liberty. The government will fear the people. Because everything they do from that moment on, there will be an army of activists out there, constitutional activists, not these psychos who take over city blocks and dress like freaks and maim and shoot people. No, like actual good Americans will be out in mass and will have just done and completed this exercise in checking the federal government. They're not going away. So when it's over, when the convention ends, regardless of what amendments get passed or get ratified, it doesn't even matter. When we turn around and we look at the situation, let's say like the border, right? That's a federal responsibility, the border, but they're clearly not up to the task. But they would be if we started making whistles and going, oh, looks like we might have to pull a convention and take that responsibility away from you because you're killing the country. I'll bet you the borders get sealed up pretty quickly, right? Because they can't, once they lose control of that, if they lose control of the borders like that, like legally lose control of the borders, it's over. If they get mandated to provide funding to states upon, by request and let the states handle it with that funding, but they're not allowed to in the decision-making process, you think that they're not going to lock down the border? You think we'll even have to call that convention? No. That's the kind of power that we'll be wielding. It's not about calling a convention every other day. It's the mere threat of being able to do it and them knowing we're serious. That's what makes all the difference in the world. So Mike Arnold says, we're training up the largest grassroots movement in American history right now, teaching what it looks like to be a self-governing citizen. Absolutely. And for those that don't know, Michael Arnold is a state director in Massachusetts, right? The liberal bastion of Massachusetts for Convention of States action, okay? And they actually got their resolution past committee twice. All right. So it's a bigger fight when it gets to the legislature, but it got past committee. Okay. So it's not, as left as California, Freudian slip, as left as Massachusetts is, there's a big difference between state legislatures and federal legislature. State legislatures are not in there for life. They're not making careers out of state legislature. They're statespeople. Okay. That's what they are. That's what they are, and in the end, these are regular dudes and dudettes, right? These are regular folks. I always play that clip of Mark Meckler, getting corrected by the senator saying Meckler had said, you guys do politics for a living, I do, and he got cut off. And the guy was like, I'm a farmer. And he was like, damn straight, I'm a farmer. He's like, we're statesmen, but I'm a farmer. So... and Rocky says, you're right, I also don't care about Biden or any government officials. Yeah, it's all noise, Rocky. It's all noise. Like, at the end, we have the solution. And this is what gets me. We have the solution. It's all we need to focus on. I could tell you, hey, this just in. Let me preempt the next 25 episodes of all these conservative pundits. Let me just preempt it. There's going to be a lot of crazy stuff coming down the pike. And they're going to try and pass a lot of crazy stuff. And nobody that's done anything wrong on their side is ever going to get convicted of anything. And all of that's going to happen. So don't get shocked every single time it happens. Our federal government is structurally broken, and it's our job to fix it. So when those things start happening, just blow it off. What your job is, every time you see one happen, educate 3 more people on Article 5 in the Convention of States. Every time you see one of these stories come up, start playing offense. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. I can't watch, and I don't care what part of the world you're in. You know what? We got a lot of international viewers. Y'all better be cheering us on. And if there's something you can do, if there is some way that you can educate yourself in this process and pump it on social media and wake up some sleeping Americans, it's much appreciated, because you know what? It's everybody's butt on the line. We're all in this together. Save America, save the world from these freaks. And trust me when I tell you, when we go down, if that ever happens, and I don't believe it ever will, I shouldn't say when, but if we ever went down, it's over. It's over. It is over. They're not asking for permission now. Here we have some protections. We have a path, and we need to use it. Not every nation has that path. Maybe they can go ahead and make some moves to build themselves that path for the future, but we don't have time for that. The United States has this in play right now. This is what has to be. This is what saves the world. This is what it is. And it's imperative that everybody see it that way. And that when these freaks at the John Birch Society or Publius Hulda or Common Cause, the Soros organizations, and all these freaks try and tell everybody, don't do it, it's too scary, you can't handle that kind of power, it's going to get out of control, blah, blah. Why do you think they would say that? Do I even have to explain what a motive for someone like that would be? The John Birch Society, I'm a little perplexed with, frankly, but I'm starting to believe the more I listen to them and the more I see that they're using tactics, the more I'm starting to think, you know what, this has been a ruse the entire time. Like to me, now that I understand what Article 5 is and I see it for the solution, the all-encompassing power move the biggest power move that the American people can do on the federal government, the most long-lasting, wide-reaching, just smackdown that the American people can put on the federal government, while the government has to just sit there and watch. Now that I know that this is the case, and I know that we have this power, the fact that we don't flex that muscle, if we let things fall apart and we don't even shoot that last bullet out of the constitutional gun, we just leave it in the chamber and fade to black while we let John Birch Society and George Soros convince us that this is not the way, it's too dangerous. What's more dangerous than losing the republic and the world falling to Marxism? I want to know from these people, what's more dangerous than that? There's nothing more dangerous than that. That's it. That's the most dangerous thing. Denise Richardson, in France, we have good people protesting the streets by the tens of thousands over economical problems that we're experiencing here too. Yeah, and keep going, Denise. Like look, everyone in the world, right? We got the yellow jackets out there. I see you. I see these movements going on around the world. And I know just from the fact that I have a channel that is dedicated pretty much solely to Article 5 and explaining Great Reset, that friggin' the fact that we have thousands of international folks that are in our follow on Facebook, it tells me all I need to know. Like, we're not the United States is not the only ones. This is global. And it also sheds some light on the way the rest of the world sees some of these Great Reset events as well. But the fact of the matter is, the fact that we have that kind of following on an international basis for a topic like this, and don't think that none of it is about Article 5. I get people messaging me constantly from the UK, from Australia, Germany, Kazakhstan. I got a guy asking questions about Article 5 who lived in Kazakhstan, and I went ahead and had like an hour and a half messaging conversation with him to break down for him how it would work. And his final comments were, "I'm praying for you guys. This sounds like it's the way." Because he knew too that like the biggest fear is, the eyes should all be, obviously you got to take care of your own business in your own country, right? But one eye has to be fixed on what's going on in the United States. And don't let your media boof you any more than our media does us, right? Like don't let them tell you a story, because you're not going to hear about Article 5 in your media. I could tell you that. But it's imperative that everybody get down with this movement, because this is it. This is the way we do it. This is the way we save the world. This is right now. I'm your biggest fan. I'm living in Thailand, and they're asleep. Here we go. So Rocky's in Thailand. There we go. A name like Rocky, I was sure that you were in the U.S., but all right. So this is they're asleep. We should take. What is it? We should take as I can inform you on what. Yeah, absolutely. Inform me on what's going on there, Rocky. Absolutely. You can message me directly to the Patriot Think Tank. We can take that conversation there. Absolutely. I want to know what's going on in Thailand. I got people that are texting me and messaging me stuff from the UK and like I said, even from Kazakhstan. Australia is a big one. So yeah, absolutely. I want to know, what's going on out there, because, obviously we're hearing one thing from our media. This Ukraine story was probably the biggest, the biggest doo-doo job that I've ever seen. I mean, after they caught me out there with that Russian tank crushing the car, and I went ahead and did a video on it as if it were a Russian tank crushing the car. And I still, to be honest, I'm not fully convinced that it wasn't. But what I am convinced of is that we don't know what the hell it was. And that, for them to go out all in and say this, paint this picture that because it was clearly all of the fake stories they had with the airline fighter who took out 10 planes, turned out to be footage from a video game. The Italian news station, while they're talking about an escalation of the war, playing video game footage behind them with missiles being hurled into the air at like massive paces. And then of course there's the Snake Island story where they said, these 13 Ukrainians were, they were fighting against a Russian warship. And they said, F you, Russian warship, until finally they ran out of bullets and all died. And then we get reports from 2 Ukrainian border guards, not from the Russians, from 2 Ukrainian border guards saying that didn't happen. There were 89 of them, not 13. They were all fed and given hospital care and released to their families, which was a storyline that made more sense than this killing civilians nonsense that the media keeps trying to portray. From everything I know about, and I know that there's differing opinions from Ukrainians about Russia, but in the end, you got to think of that relationship. Like, what if California seceded from the Union? Stop clapping, everyone. It's just a thought. But if California seceded from the Union, right? But you got all kinds of family, they're still interconnected as far as everyone's living. It's the same concept. Like the U.S., even if it wanted to take back California, it wouldn't come in murdering civilians and doing all that. It just wouldn't be doing that. So it's kind of the same concept when you're looking at Ukraine. It was a part of Russia, then it wasn't a part of Russia, but that it's not like everyone who believed in the Soviets moved. Like, they all just stayed in Ukraine, and and it is what it is. But these narratives, helping me out with stuff like that, I absolutely appreciate that. So, and Michael, thank you for bringing it up, because I want to make sure that everyone does know that the movement is real. As far as Article 5. For those that don't know, there are 19 states. 4 of them passed this year. That's the most in any 1 year. This has been going on for 9 years, which is about status quo for a constitutional amendment. Things like the 16th Amendment, 17th, these things were all being petitioned for a decade or more before they finally made their way to amendments. So we're right on pace. Unfortunately, the good people at Cause Action had the foresight to start this a long time ago. And so we're starting now. We're trying to wake people up, but you're waking up more than halfway there. You're waking up with 19 of the 34 states already on board, and enough resolutions written that you can, if you apply that pressure, and it doesn't take that many people on a state and local level to apply the pressure, folks. Like, we're not talking, if you're in Kansas and we need to move that along, then you know what, or maybe, what is it? South Dakota, or some of these other ones that still need to get pushed along, right? If you're in those states, if you teach 10 people and those people teach 10 people, okay, you probably have enough to have an impact on, and if those people teach 10 people, you almost assuredly have enough to have a serious impact on your state legislator. Like, that's the kind of numbers we're talking about. We're not talking, this is all about on the state level. This is all about local. This is all about your local politician, your local state and House representative. These are the people, all right, who they're available. They're accessible. If you write them a handwritten letter, I assure you, you'll get some kind of response back. All right. And in most cases, you can even schedule time with them to sit down for 15, 20 minutes and try and make your case. And if you ever do go down that road, make sure you're respectful. We're not trying to be these doo-doo-doos throwing Molotov cocktails in the street. We're good Americans who are trying to do the right thing. And these people have a job to do. They're regular Joes like us. They probably don't even know everything there is to know about Article 5. Which is where we come in. We educate them, right? And that's a lot of what Michael and other people are doing, is they're educating these people. They're taking these people, these legislators who don't know about the Constitution, who don't know. They know about the Constitution the way most Americans do, which frankly these days is not much. And we can hate on them for not knowing the Constitution, but the fact of the matter is, if you decided to give service and run for office, you're going to know what you know now. You're going to get in there and you're going to think you know the Constitution, and then someone hits you with Article 5. It's never been used before in American history. Lord knows our schools don't teach about it. So you're going to be like, what the heck? And then you bump into one of these doo-doo-doos at the John Birch Society, and you get the crap scared out of you, and you're like, hell no, I don't want to be a part of that. If I had a nickel for every time I had to watch a state legislator across these different states, as I watch the different debates on these resolutions, if I had a nickel or a dollar for every time inflation, a dollar for every time one of these guys gets up and says, I was against it before I read into it, before I learned about it, before I put it in historical context, before I read the founders' notes, before I did that, I was against it. And in the states that it has, those resolutions haven't passed yet, those are the people who haven't read yet. And in order to get them to do that, and like South Carolina was a perfect example. I think there were two who spoke just in that one alone, who were like, yeah, I was against this before I read my way into understanding it, and now I want this more than anything. And that's the thing. Once you understand how powerful it is, everything else becomes noise. Everything else becomes noise. It doesn't matter, right? Like we said, the Biden this, Pelosi did this, Mitch McConnell's, Mitt Romney, what a rhino, Liz Cheney, can't believe it. Like all this nonsense that goes on. Forget all those people. 80% of those people will disappear with the term limits amendment right out the chute. Like, so it doesn't even matter what they're doing, because we know they're actively trying to hurt the country. We know that. We're not asking that question anymore. We're watching it unfold. The question is, they're willing to do that. What are we willing to do? And this is what we need to be willing to do. You can sign the petition. There's a link on our website. All right. www.thepatriotThinkTank.com/COS, or you can go to the Convention of States website directly, conventionofstates.com. All right. And you can sign the petition there. Now, I tell you to go through our website because it helps us to know, just for the sake of knowing what's been successful and what hasn't, how many referrals we're getting from our efforts to conventionofstates.com. But we also have on our site a listing, a breakdown of the states with actual links to the resolutions in your state, with an update as to what the last movement was and you know what you can do. When you go and you sign the petition, that's when you go ahead and register with Convention of States. Someone local will reach out to you. Somebody in, like when we registered, when Jack and I registered back when, this is a year and a half ago or a little more, you know, it was maybe like a day, not even, that someone was calling us to be like, hey, you know, this is Michelle from Convention of States. Just want to, you know, say thank you for signing on. We're glad to have you. You know, and then they start to talk to you and just have a conversation about what you can. I mean, this is as grassroots as it gets. Like this girl that called me lives like 20 minutes away from me. All right. So it's I've been to letter writing parties with them and stuff like that. So like it's a very local grassroots. I mean, as grassroots as it gets. I would argue this is even more grassroots than the Tea Party movement originally was. I mean, this is, you know, before the media turned everybody into racists and you know, all that. But like in the end, this is as grassroots. And believe me, the media is going to try and turn us all into racists too. Don't get it twisted. They're just not. We don't have enough states. And when we get 3 or 4 more states on board, yeah, get ready. You'll start seeing it in the news. The attacks will be on, and that'll be a badge of honor that we wear, because, you know, I'm waiting for these guys. There's only a few now that are coming out on the attack. But that being said, I'm waiting for the big dogs. I'm waiting for the MSNBCs and the, you know, all those doo-doos. So, yeah, Mike says make sure to check the volunteer box when you sign the petition. Yep. Absolutely. Check the volunteer box. Thank you, Mike, for clarifying that. And because that's important, right? And that's what I like. Signing the petition is nice, and they'll send an email or whatnot to your representative on your behalf, but it's not the answer. The answer is you taking a minute to volunteer. And if you're retired, you should have plenty of time. If you're not, let's say you got 5 jobs, you could still, you're watching this. You're sitting here watching this. So in the end, you have time to be on social media, share off a few things, you know, bring some light to some stuff, talk to people, right? Everyone that signs the petition should find themselves committed to getting 10 more people to sign. All right. This is how grassroots grows. All right. It doesn't grow from MSNBC, doesn't grow from Fox News. It grows from the Patriot Think Tank, from Cause Action, All Things Article 5, another great channel that just started. He's about to take this guy, Robert Brown, from the John Birch Society's money. He was offering $10,000, and he's took him up on the challenge and is killing this guy. So that's a fun watch. So definitely tune into him as well. But we're starting to grow. And when I say grow, I don't mean the movement that's been growing. I mean these channels. Like we're growing. We're growing because more people see than ever before. More people see than ever before, and that matters. And Brenda Edwards says, thank you for all you do for our country. I appreciate you. VOG, BCE, Kentucky. All right, Kentucky. Now, Brenda, I hope you're not responsible for. Oh no, wait. Yeah, no. Mitch McConnell is Kentucky, right? He's not Kansas. He's Kentucky. Yeah, we got to get him out too, Brenda. But Brenda says he's noise. It doesn't matter, right, Brenda? McConnell's just noise. We get him out with term limits. Is how we get him out, and that's fact. And that's fact. But thank you, Brenda, for watching. Definitely appreciate you. All the cause folks that dial in, I definitely appreciate you guys. And I can highlight the comments from from Facebook, Twitch, and YouTube. I cannot highlight the comments from Rumble. I never really know how many people are watching on Rumble. Rumble just needs to tighten up their platform, but we do keep everything we do on YouTube is done on Rumble as well. It's kind of our fail-safe. Most channels are doing this these days. If you do like a channel, including ours, make sure you head over there as well to click the subscribe button, because if we do disappear one day off the face of the earth and you can't find us anywhere, I assure you, you will find us on Rumble. So that's kind of everyone's, in case of emergency, break glass sort of thing. Let me go through some of these, see what else we got here. Rocky, you've been really busy. Let me see. Rocky, you don't have to write in capitals. I can read it anyway. I get I get the same display that you get on the screen when it comes in, so no worries. And then he says, the media is corrupt. I have contacts in many countries that are keeping me informed. Germany, Hungary, UK, and many more. Yeah, this whole NATO alliance is morally bankrupt. I'm sorry. It is. And I'm not saying Putin's a good guy. I'm just saying he ain't really the bad guy in this particular situation. In the end, and maybe he is. I don't know. I don't get enough of the propaganda from the Russian side of it, or from that end. I get all the propaganda from the American side, and I can tell you, so far, they're batting zero. They're over as far as getting the story right. So I may not know, maybe it's true that the Russians have their own narrative going on that I don't know about, that's propaganda. I don't know. What I do know is that ours is complete bullshit. Like our narrative is completely false when it comes to Ukraine. There is just zero evidence to back up anything that we're claiming with respect to Ukraine. So again, it's noise to me at this point. It's noise. I pray for the people in Ukraine because they're pawns in all this. They're pawns in all this. But really, you want to try and make sense to me of starting World War III over the idea that Ukraine becomes a part of NATO? Is that really make sense to anybody? To anybody? Because if that gets off the table, this whole thing ends. This whole thing ends, and nobody talks about that. But if NATO just said, you know what, maybe this went a little too far. Let's go ahead and forget the whole Ukraine thing, and let's call it a day. The whole thing ends. Again, we didn't, COVID didn't crash the economy. They did, right? COVID didn't start this war. They did, right? So, but Putin's the aggressor. He went in first, right? So when everyone in the world knows that Putin's going to go into Ukraine, if the United Nations were to try and make Ukraine a part of NATO and put their troops and forces directly on Russia's border, when everyone knows that's going to be the case, and NATO goes in anyway and says, we don't really care. We want Ukraine. Then I put that on them. Okay? I do. That's where I stand with it. Like I said, this could all end tomorrow if NATO just goes, you know what? Let's just let Ukraine be a separate entity. All the tanks turn around, leave, all the missiles stop falling, everything's over. It's all over at that point. This has been going on since 2014. Everyone on Earth knew that those actions were going to cause this to happen, and they didn't care. Not only did they not care, they did it aggressively on purpose. I could go on all day about the BS narrative and the insult to my intelligence that I have to watch coming from these Fox News doo-doos and these freaking lefty channels, and I'm over it. This is why I say it's all noise. It's all noise to me right now. There's nothing I'm not running over to Ukraine and saving anybody. So in the end, there's nothing I can do about that. There is something I can do about a convention of states. There is something I can do about taking back the federal government for the United States to the people. There is something I can do about that. There is something I can do about getting our economic house in order, about getting us off of modern monetary theory. There's something I can do about that. And right now, what I can do is educate Americans on the fact that this even exists. I would love to say, you know what? I'm helping because I'm driving all these people down to the Capitol, or I'm driving all these people. But you know what? In too many states right now, we're not getting that movement. In every state that we do get that movement, we get a resolution passed. That's how this works. So you need to go to our website and check that out and see where your state is. Because if your state is one of those that has a resolution, I'll have it listed there with a link. And if there's a mistake or something like that, hit me up and I will get it corrected. But I don't think there is. Go ahead and check that out. You'll see the actual resolution. Write your freaking senator, write your local legislature, and tell them. And get those 10 people I talked about and tell them to do it too. Handwrite the letter. Why? Because everybody reads a handwritten letter. If I handwrite a letter and mail it to your house right now, I guarantee you will open that letter and be like, who the hell handwrote this letter? And you will read it. That's why. It doesn't have to be a long letter. Just needs to let them know that you're in favor of convention of states and you'd like to have some of their time to talk to them about it. Before you even do something like that, though, you need to educate yourself. So when you go and you click the volunteer button, you register at conventionofstates.com. Again, the link on our website will take you right to it. Once you do all that, you get yourself registered, you talk to somebody. They have what's called Cause University, Convention of States University. It's a series of videos that will get you up to speed on what the arguments are for and against. There's only one argument against, and it's a crazy one, but they will break that down for you. I also have a litany of Article 5 videos, a playlist on YouTube that you can check out there as well. So definitely do that as well. And then, all right, I think we're good to go here. I just want to thank Michael, Rocky, Denise, Susie over in Alaska. Thank you guys for jumping on, watching. Definitely appreciate you. I'll have some more videos coming out. My job is getting a little bit intense right now, so I may be slowing down a little bit. I'm on my own now, so I don't know. I'm trying to pump out as much as I can, but it's easier for me to go live. So I may just jump on and go live from time to time, but I am working on learning After Effects as well. Because I am all self-taught. So I am now teaching myself how to use After Effects to better the quality of the videos we produce. And, on that note, though, again, I just want to thank everybody. Make sure that you subscribe, tell your friends, and follow us. Facebook and YouTube are the two big ones. So Facebook, we're very close to our 10,000 mark, which we're at like 8,500, I think, or something along those lines with Facebook. So 10,000, at least 10,000 is the amount of followers you need to monetize. We've already passed the 1,000 limit on YouTube, which is what you need to monetize. The problem is I don't really have the time to put out enough content to get the watch time that I need. So, but I'll work on that. That's a me problem. But it would be nice to be able to get a little scratch from this so I can pay for some of the software and other stuff instead of coming out of pocket for everything. But nonetheless, even if we don't monetize, I will come out of pocket. I can afford it. These are the types of things I work for. So, but again, I want to just say thank you to everybody. And if you have any questions, if you ever want to communicate, if you have any specific Article 5 type questions, you can reach me via Messenger for the Patriot Think Tank on Facebook, or even if you just comment on YouTube, on one of the YouTube videos, I will usually get those because we don't get a ton of comments. Facebook's a little different. The videos will get 1,000 comments and stuff. It's possible I miss a comment there. message me if you're on Facebook. YouTube, the comments are a lot slower. So if that's the case, then just, hit me up with a comment, or you can go to our website and click the contact us. That's an email address that goes straight to my phone. So I will see that as well. All right. But until next time, folks, thank you very much. Live free, and make sure you're signing that petition.
And like that,